John Brennan is best known for being the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. In recent years, he's done a number of interviews that have caught people's attention. One that's been shared thousands of times on social media is this one, in which he was asked what does he think about advanced life forms, and does the United States know more than what the people do? He responded with the following. When people talk about is there other life besides us in the United States, in the world or globe, life is defined in many different ways, and I think it's presumptuous and arrogant to believe that there's no other form of life anywhere else in the entire universe. What they might be is what I think comes down to a lot of different views, but some of the phenomena that we're seeing at the moment continues to be unexplained, and might in fact be some type of phenomenon that is the result of something that we don't yet understand, and that could involve some type of activity that some might say constitutes to a different form of life." End quote. This video immediately started to get shared around and led to people sharing their opinion on what he meant by this. It's no secret that the Central Intelligence Agency has been investigating mysterious events. And in recent years, they've also shared their experience with mysterious aircrafts, many of which they've said remain unsolved. It's due to these reports that many have taken an interest in this topic, with amateur researchers saying that companies like the Central Intelligence Agency and NASA are starting to open up about what they know. It was only recently that Bill Nelson, NASA's current chief administrator, said that they will be investigating mysterious aircrafts that are often seen in our skies, saying that Navy officials have approached them and detailed some of the things that they've seen. One person said the following: "One of the most interesting things about this interview is to remember that the Central Intelligence Agency knows more than any of us, and the fact that you refuse to look into the camera once while saying this is something that we shouldn't ignore. Being at such a high position in the Central Intelligence Agency means that he knows a lot of things that he's keeping close to his chest. Eye movement and body language is a big thing, and I don't think he wants people to analyze his eye movements. It's an interesting confession nonetheless, and it seems to be something that's very relevant at the moment. Hopefully we get more officials coming forward about this topic." End quote. The Central Intelligence Agency has one of the largest databases on these mysterious objects, going into detail about what Air Force pilots, radar specialists, and ground investigators have encountered over the years. One of the strangest things that they picked up on was the fact that when we started to launch missiles and other large weapons, we started to get strange visitations of fast-moving objects, which they described as being able to outmaneuver their crafts, easily get into restricted airspace, having the ability to shut down their electronics, and could hover motionless above bases that were storing these missiles. How they were able to do this, and how they knew where they were being kept is still a mystery. But during the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, they were able to gather a large amount of data about these objects, and how they were seemingly interested in some of the things that we were doing during that time. One document that was released by the Central Intelligence Agency several years ago details the following. During 2 weeks in 1975, a string of the nation's supersensitive nuclear missile launch sites and bomber bases were visited by an unidentified low-flying elusive object. The Department of Defense then started to track these objects. The sightings, made visually and on radar by air and ground controls and sabotage alert forces, occurred at installations in Montana, Michigan, and Maine, and led to extensive but unsuccessful Air Force attempts to track and detain the objects. Air Force and Defense Department records described the objects as aircrafts that were unknown with bright colors, detailing that they were fast-moving and they would hover over nuclear weapon storage areas and evade all pursuit efforts. In several instances, after base security had been penetrated, the Air Force sent fighter planes and airborne command planes aloft to carry out on unsuccessful pursuits. The record does not indicate if the fighter jets fired on the intruders. The documents also give no indication that the airspace inclusions provoked much more than local command concern. But a November 11, 1975 directive from the Office of the Secretary of the Air Force instructed public information staffers to avoid linking the scattered sightings unless specifically asked. An Air Force press officer who deals with mysterious aircraft said he could have no comment about what happened. Yet another Air Force intelligence report indicated extensive interest in a 1976 incident over Iran, when 2 Iranian Air Force F-4 Phantom fighter planes were scrambled to encounter a bright lit object that was hovering in the skies near Tehran. That object was tracked by Iranian ground radar, seen independently by the crew of a commercial airliner and pursued by the Air Force, which according to the report experienced a breakdown of their electronic communication devices when near the object. The report compiled by American officials said that the electronic weapon system of one of the planes went dead when its pilot prepared to fire an AIM-9 missile at a small object that appeared to come out from the large craft. The plane's electronic equipment reportedly became operative after they veered away from the smaller object, which had returned to the larger craft. Iranians described the larger object with colored flashing lights as the size of a Boeing 707 jetliner. The information on the 1975 and 1976 sightings from the Air Force and North American Defense Command NORAD was turned over to redacted. End quote. So what do you make of these interesting comments? And what do you make of mysterious flying aircrafts? Historians, paleontologists, and scientists have done a great job at mapping our history. Every year they learn something more about our past, helping us to unravel some of our world's most fascinating mysteries. However, sometimes researchers discover things that aren't so easy to explain. These photographs were recently shared on social media, detailing that diggers in Mexico had found mysterious artifacts in newly dug tunnels. The videos and photographs in question show a team of diggers pulling out a strange artifact, with people who are close to the region saying that diggers weren't expecting to find anything, and that they're just as confused as everybody else. The discovery seems to depict an elongated skull, and we can see that it was found in a hole that was around 4 to 5 foot deep. These depictions are interesting because they match drawings that have been found in cave systems across our world. What they are is up for debate. There's groups of people that think they depict an advanced lost civilization, noting that different cultures have depicted these beings with large skulls, while others think that they may have created these artifacts based on dreams and hallucinations. There's also many who have said that these artifacts are fake. However, some of the diggers have come forward in detail that they weren't looking for these things and were just carrying out construction in the area. One user said the following, "Is the only one I've ever found, and I'm annoyed that they lost it." End quote. Just last year, diggers who were working on the mine train said they had discovered artifacts that were very similar to this. At the time, construction work was underway to build a large railway in Mexico, with the construction beginning in December in 2018. Due to many local CINES artifacts, it led to some local news stations covering the finds. However, they quickly vanished from the limelight. These discoveries were made in a region known as Quintana Roo, and there's no other way to describe these artifacts other than they look like extraterrestrials, possessing big eyes, a large oval head, and just matching the overall shape of the gray alien. This had social media users convinced that these are the real deal, and that perhaps civilizations thousands of years ago had an encounter that led them to worship them. Not everyone was impressed with the findings though, with one Mexican archaeologist saying that these are fakes, and that although they were allegedly found with other Mayan artifacts, it's thought that they were placed here in order to make the findings seem more genuine, with others saying the following, "If this was the real deal, it would be one of the biggest archaeological discoveries ever made." I can't find much information about this either. Searching Google only brings up a few results. I think these are fake. End quote. As some have pointed out though, it seems like a lot of work to go through. Why would someone build these if an archaeologist is just going to shut them down? With another user saying the following, "I'm on the edge about these discoveries. On one hand, they sound too good to be true, but on the other, I want to believe. I'm sure if these are real, though they'll likely be taken and stored away somewhere. I doubt these will be given any serious consideration. After all, could you imagine if these turned out to be real? You'd pretty much rewrite history." End quote. While this user said the following, "With much of our history lost, perhaps we are misinterpreting these things. It seems like a lot of work to go through just to place down a fake artifact. Maybe there was a civilization that worshipped these entities as a god, and so in return they would create these depictions of them to show their dedication. Kind of how the ancient Egyptians worshipped gods like Thoth, who is depicted as having the body of a man and the head of an ibis." End quote. Although it's easy to dismiss these cases, Many have agreed that it's important that we carry out further investigations to find out as much as possible before ruling them out entirely. With some saying that sometimes our attitude towards certain topics is our downfall, and that we should always go into things with an open mind. Due to recent events in this region, it's only led to locals having a more open mind, as many residents have reported strange lights in the sky, with many of them not being able to identify a source. These fast-moving, glowing objects are near impossible to capture on camera because they move too fast. Eyewitnesses have described them as being large balls of light that seem to pulsate every so often, saying that while in the sky they make next to no noise. Due to them appearing to be balls of plasma, when people have zoomed in on their cameras they just look like a blur. These strange objects have been observed flying at incredible speeds, stopping within the blink of an eye, and flying up to buildings, animals, and land as if they're inspecting them. What's odd is that these glowing objects are no bigger than a few feet in diameter, yet they're one of the most commonly reported sightings, with tens of thousands of people seeing these things every year. One of the places where these objects are most commonly seen is that of Skinwalker Ranch in the United States, a ranch that's said to be a hotspot for things like glowing orbs, portals, and skinwalker-like creatures. As of right now, it's anyone's guess as to what these things are. So what do you make of these discoveries? Even after centuries of consistent research, most of Earth's history remains a mystery. Archaeologists, historians, scientists, and others all try to give us answers to the questions of the universe, but still ones that no one can answer. Of course, despite the mysteries, discoveries have been made. These discoveries tell us more about our history, our past, and even our own lives. But sometimes they leave us even more clueless than before. So today, we'll dig into 3 noteworthy discoveries that will hopefully tell us more about our past. Mayan Queen discovered. Although not much is known about the Mesoamerican civilization of the Mayans, they were one of the most scientifically advanced societies of all time. They designed an incredibly detailed calendar and made scientific strides in fields like astronomy and mathematics. Their penchant for maths also allowed them to build impressive buildings and structures with stunning precision and accuracy. Because of the density of the Mesoamerican jungle, many Mayan structures and places of significance have remained undiscovered. However, using radar technology, scientists were able to pinpoint the location of new pyramids, as well as what scientists believe to be a military watchtower. Inside the pyramids, scientists found the finger bones and decayed skeleton of an elderly woman. Since her skeleton was surrounded by precious items and the location of her burial was prominent, pyramid belonged to a Mayan queen. The presence of a queen typically means that a king is buried somewhere nearby, but perhaps even more interesting were the findings near the watchtower. Outside the watchtower, scientists began excavation. They discovered the decapitated skull and teeth of a child. There was other evidence near the child, including pieces of broken pottery and a stone monument that looked as if it had been burnt. Scientists believe that this evidence suggests one of 2 things. Either this Mayan settlement endured a military attack or the child was ritually sacrificed. However, also discovered a piece of ritual pottery, well preserved and intact. Because of the condition of the vase, scientists were able to read the inscriptions that described the king who owned it. A find like this is so rare, and it gives us a nearly unprecedented glimpse into the lives of the Mayan people. The radar technology that scientists use to find this Mayan settlement can prove incredibly helpful in finding and locating other similar sites of archaeological and historical importance. And it can help the scientists find, study, and preserve important historical sites and artifacts before looters. As the director of the dig, Tulane University's Dr. Francisco Estradabelli said, "None of the discoveries of this site would have been made if looters found the site first." Tomb of Ramesses II's treasurer unearthed. To this day, ancient Egypt serves as one of the most thoroughly researched periods of history. Since the earliest discoveries of this great civilization, its popularity has hardly waned. Scientists still study it, students still read about it, and Hollywood still glamorizes it. Both because, and despite of its popularity, new discoveries are made all the time. One of the latest of these discoveries includes Tartamware, Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses II's head treasurer. Ramesses II reigned from 1279 to 1213 BCE, claiming the second longest reign in Egyptian history. Ramesses II boasts a strong and legendary reputation that includes battles with the Hittites and Libyans, the incorporation of sweeping building programs, and the commissioning of numerous gigantic statues in his honor. Although a fair amount is known about Ramesses II, less seems to be known about his royal team. However, while excavating in Saqqara necropolis, a team of Cairo University students discovered the tomb of Tartamwiyya, Ramesses II's head treasurer, royal scribe, and supervisor of cattle. Temple. Ola El-Agizi, the Egyptian language scholar leading the archaeological research, claims that Tartamwiyya's tomb has a very distinctive style shared by other tombs at the site. The entrance contains carved scenes that detail and recall events in Tartamwiyya's life. Inside, the walls are covered with colorful images and paintings, one of which depicts a sacrificial Assyrian columns, a very popular adornment during Ramses II's rule, were also discovered at the scene. Assyrian columns are depictions of a standing Osiris, the god of the deceased and resurrection. Some of these columns were covered by the sand, and blocks were scattered all around the tomb. According to El-Agizi, the tomb and all of its parts will be thoroughly studied before being put back into their original places. The Saqqara necropolis is where archaeologists discovered Tartamwiyya's tomb and was used as a ritual ground for more than 3 millennia. Although the discovery of Tartamwiyya's tomb is clearly noteworthy, the Saqqara necropolis may provide more information about ancient Egypt and its intimate practices than ever before. In late 2020, archaeologists discovered what they are now calling megatombs of mass sites. They even found a single site with over 100 tombs, the first of its kind discovered in Egypt. The Saqqara necropolis has been garnering more researchers than ever before, and for good reason. By focusing on previously neglected sites of historical significance, perhaps scientists can help piece together more of the history of ancient Egypt. And by doing so, they can help answer the burning questions that have plagued the public for centuries. Solar Storm proves that the Vikings settled in the New World 1,000 years ago. The Vikings are one of the most well-researched historical groups in history. However, there is still so little known about them, their history, their culture, and their customs. Most people know about them in passing, and while some view them as a great civilization worthy of deference and respect, others do not, opting to talk about their rumored insatiable appetites for both food and violence instead. Most of what we know about the Vikings are based on oral histories passed down for generations. These histories talk about the famed Viking leader Leif Erikson and a settlement called Vinland, believed to be somewhere along the east coast of North America. But perhaps the most important Viking settlement in North America is Lonzo Meadows, located in Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada. Initially discovered in the 1960s, the Vikings' L'Anse aux Medois is believed to have flourished as a Viking settlement from 990 to 1050 AD. And while it is clear that the Vikings were the first Europeans to discover the New World, until very recently, scientists were unable to pinpoint the exact year. 3 fir and juniper logs were discovered and excavated at L'Anse aux Medois. These logs still had the bark attached and were in fact living during the time of the Vikings. Scientists at the University of Groningen said that the trees were felled in a characteristically Viking way, with metal tools and low-angled cuts. Using this information, scientists were able to link the existence of the trees to the solar storm of 993 AD. The recorded solar storm of 993 AD was a massive one, and it released a pulse of radiation that the trees absorbed. As we know, trees grow a new ring every year. For the 993 AD ring, trees were marked with visible radiation. By counting outward 28 rings worth, the scientists were able to figure out that the Vikings discovered the New World exactly 1,000 years ago in 1021 AD, centuries before Christopher Columbus. If this discovery proves one thing, it is that new archaeological discoveries are being made every day, and the possibility of the next breakthrough should never be denied. The only way we are going to find the answers to our burning questions is by looking. Indeed, new discoveries are made about old things all the time. Sometimes these ancient civilizations feel extremely far removed from our here and now, distant and unreachable to us as citizens of the 21st century. But it is important to remember that there are always discoveries to be made. And who knows? Maybe the next new discovery will answer one of the oldest questions of all time. But what do you make of these mysteries? Ever since being discovered, the world has been fascinated with the giant shark Megalodon. It would have been an apex predator during its time, feasting on prehistoric seals, turtles, and whales. We know this because researchers have found tooth markings on whale bones. The Megalodon also holds the totals being the largest shark to have ever swam in our oceans. What happened to the shark is up for debate. Some researchers have suggested that whales and other large prey moved to colder, deeper waters, which eventually led to their downfall, while some blame geological changes. Unfortunately for the Megalodon, evolution does not promote monoculture, and the only way to guarantee the safety of a species and its chances at survival is to promote genetic variation and adaptations throughout a species. Given the lack of genetic variation of the species, this could very well mean that disease or rapid changes in the environment were the main cause of extinction. Similarly, seen in the case of the Gros Michel banana species that was completely eradicated by a single fungal plague, when a species contains little to no variation in its genetics, it becomes incredibly susceptible to specific diseases and the damage that they cause on their species. Megalodon's reign ended, and scientists have said we found no proof of this shark existing into the modern day. But this hasn't stopped people from allegedly seeing the creature in our oceans. Megalodon sightings are brushed aside by scientists, but there are some out there who think that this giant shark may have moved into deeper waters, or somehow found another way to survive into the modern day. One of the most recent photographs to do the rounds on social media is this one. Photographs are from Google Earth, and the individual who took the screenshots claims that it could be Megalodon. The photograph in question was captured just off the coast of Peru, and interestingly, the poster said that it shares many characteristics with the prehistoric Megalodon. The man made a post saying that it can be seen close to shore, noting that researchers said that the Megalodon would hunt close to the shore during prehistoric times, and also took out the measuring tool to show that it measured in at 20.5 meters long, which oddly enough is pretty much bang on what Megalodon would have been. 20.5 meters long is 67 feet, and just recently Victor Perez from the Florida Museum of Natural History, a lead author of a new study, proved that Megalodon's estimates were wrong, and that the shark wasn't 50 to 60 feet long, but rather 60 to 70 feet long, proving that we had the mouse wrong. The team behind the study were able to use 3D printed replica teeth from the Megalodon, which were able to grow up to 7 inches long, and said that they were able to come to this new conclusion. He said the following about the old estimates. I was going around checking, saying, did you use the wrong equation? Did you forget to convert your units? But it very quickly became clear that it was not the students that made the error. It was simply that the equations were not as accurate as we had predicted. Victor Perez and his team is talking about an equation that was put out in 2002, where scientists said that the Megalodon measured in at 50 to 60 feet. He continued with the following. I think a lot of people had seen that study and blindly accepted the equations. Perez is now assistant creator of paleontology at the Calvert Marine Museum in Maryland, and says that Megalodon's size of 65 feet upwards is much more realistic. Some people are quick to share their opinions on the photograph, with one person saying the following, I'm not sure that you can claim that this thing is Megalodon, although I do find it strange how this thing's length is pretty much the same as an adult Megalodon. I'm sure that it's a coincidence, but it could be something like a whale. While this person said this, who are we to say that a descendant of the Megalodon doesn't exist somewhere in our oceans? Every year we discover thousands of new species, many of which belong in the ocean. Over 90% of our oceans remain unexplored, and it was only recently that scientists discovered a new shark species. So for all we know, there could be a large shark species at the bottom of the ocean that we have no idea about. End quote. It's not just satellites that are encountering alleged giant sharks. Fishermen and those who spend a large amount of time on the oceans have come forward with their stories, with some of them detailing that they've seen sharks measuring over 40 feet in length, with many of these stories coming from Mexico and Australia. Those who have encountered these creatures are torn about what they're seeing, with some saying that what they might be seeing is a large great white shark, while others theorize that they may be an entirely new species. Back in 1918, a researcher by the name of David Steend, an Australian expert in natural history, wrote about the strange events of when a number of fishermen located to the air of the site and claimed to quit their jobs, and even refused to go back out into the open ocean after witnessing a sighting of a shark so massive that it had eaten their entire loaded net in one bite. This giant shark also destroyed all of their gear and nearly sunk their entire bones. The reports came from lifelong fishermen veterans, and not from amateurs unaware of the ocean life around them, being more than familiar with whales and already known species of sharks to prevent them from being frightened. Despite this experience, they still claim that the shark they'd witnessed was far larger than any shark they'd ever witnessed. According to the gathered information from the researcher, the shark in question was believed to have been bigger than a whale shark and pure white in color. So what do you make of this photograph? And do you think there's a large undiscovered shark species swimming around in our oceans? Every day people discover strange things that have been under our noses all along. Some of these discoveries are scientifically enlightening, some are bone-chilling, and others are just downright weird. But one thing is for certain: the more we find and uncover, the more we know there is to be found. So today, we will be diving deep into 3 recent discoveries. Ancient Egyptian mummy 7 months pregnant. What comes to mind when you think of ancient Egypt? Perhaps the unthinkable feat of human architecture known as the pyramids, the mysterious traps and tombs beneath the surface, or what about the scorching hot Egyptian summers that make the deserts in the distance hazy? Needless to say, there is plenty about ancient Egypt that is full of potential to explore. That is precisely what researchers and tomb robbers alike have been doing for hundreds of years. Where the former's motivations lie in curiosity, the latter's lie in millions of dollars worth of riches that adorn the mummified bodies of the royals. However, no matter who dares to venture beneath and disturb those at rest, it is said that an unbreakable curse falls upon them. Luckily, there will be no curse that falls upon you today as we explore one of the most fascinating recent discoveries surrounding the mummy that was uncovered, that they had discovered a male priest. Instead, they realized with shock that it was not only a woman, but actually a pregnant woman of 7 months. The X-ray and computer tests that were run revealed the small feet and hands of a fetus within the woman's body, making the woman the first and only known case of her kind. Though she was pregnant, her body had been preserved for far longer. She dates back to the 1st century BC, near Upper Egypt in royal tombs of Thebes. Yet how exactly did the researchers make such a categorical blunder in the first place? Perhaps the answer lay within her coffin, which had an inscription that noted it contained a male priest by the name of Hor Jehudi. Because it was common for bodies to not exactly match their coffins, perhaps her body had been there by mistake due to some mix-up on part of some grave robbers. Upon actually laying their eyes upon the body, the researchers were surprised to find that it had female physical features. The fetus confirmed that she had been pregnant and at the young age of between 20 to 30. Though it was a complete mystery as to how exactly she died, the mummification process was intricate and carefully done. Her body was laid in layers of fabric, and because of her supposed high social status, she was buried with several amulets and other items. It opens up the doors to new research on the practices of how embalming has occurred for pregnant women. Just as more and more tombs are being uncovered every day, new light is shining upon age-old mysteries. Amber Smith, 2-year-old, disappeared. Sometimes people who disappear without a trace turn up years or decades later, while other times it is only a matter of days or hours. However, for Dale and Diane Smith, whose 2-daughter Amber was missing for about 24 hours, those hours seemed interminable. In early October 2013, Dale was at their home in Newaygo County, Michigan with Amber, when he stepped into another room for mere minutes and upon returning was alarmed to find that Amber was nowhere to be found. It appeared that she had simply wandered out of the house, but initial searches yielded no sign of the 2-year-old. As the day turned into night with still no sign of Amber, the Smiths grew even more frantic to find their missing daughter, as she had last been seen wearing only a tank top and shorts, and the temperatures were already rapidly plummeting to around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The town rallied a large group composed of over 300 people that spent hours combing through the dense woods near the family home, but to no avail. Authorities that were called in to assist even used search and rescue dogs to attempt to follow her trail and sent helicopters to conduct an aerial search of the woods. However, both the police and the civilian groups were unable to find any clues as to where the child might have gone, and did not even know whether she was still wandering around somewhere nearby, or if she had been taken by a passing stranger. As the hours passed with no trace of the girl, authorities began to be seriously concerned about the likelihood of finding Amber. The Newaygo County Undersheriff Brian Boyd even gave a press conference saying that the lack of clues was very suspicious, and an Amber Alert was immediately issued to notify authorities and civilians in neighboring towns in case she had been abducted. But even the Amber Alert turned up nothing, and with the masses of people searching fruitlessly for her, it truly seemed that she had vanished from the streets of Michigan. However, at around 2 p.m. the next day, as the 24-hour mark of Amber's disappearance approached, she was found on the edge of a 2-lane road almost 2 miles from her house. She was immediately transported to the local hospital, but aside from minor scrapes and bruises, appeared totally unharmed. Authorities and her parents were immensely relieved at the outcome, but were astonished by the fact that such a young girl was able to survive overnight in such dense woods and emerge untouched so far from her home. Amber was unable to say what had happened to her that night as she was too young to understand the questions. But thankfully, no matter how she managed to survive the cold night, she was able to be safely reunited with her family. Melting glaciers in northern Italy reveal 2 soldiers. From 1914 to 1918, the world was engulfed in battles, a conflict that ravaged nations and toppled empires. The sheer scale of destruction experienced during those years altered history, changing power balances across the globe and resulting in a monumental loss of life. In some ways, the effects of that era are still felt today, with remnants of the chaos appearing in the most unexpected places, leaving a stain on many of the most jaw-droppingly beautiful places you could visit. Such a thing occurred a few years ago in the alpine ski town of Piero. This tourist haven is nestled in mountainous northern Italy, and if you can look past its various pleasurable amenities and picturesque hiking trails, you will quickly realize there is more to this town than meets the eye. Due to ever-increasing temperatures, the thick sheets of ice that make up the glaciers surrounding the mountains have started to melt, spilling their secrets out in the process. In 2014, on the 100th anniversary of the beginning of the Great War, the pristinely preserved corpses of 2 World War I Italian soldiers were found among the melting ice. The obscurity of their mummified remains was explained by the fact that the town was at the center of a violent episode at that time. This conflict was primarily a battlefront in the snowy terrain of the Alps between the 2 opposing sides of Italy, who were then part of the Allies, and Austria, who was part of the Central Powers. Due to the unforgiving geography of the area, the style of battle was different to that experienced at sea level. Specialized soldiers were utilized on both sides, with the Italian Alpine warriors aptly named Alpini, and their Austrian counterparts known as the Kaiserschützen. Both sides had to endure the ferocious cold and work around the tricky geography, using a system of cable cars, all whilst under the imminent threat of spontaneous avalanches and storms. The 2 soldiers in question, upon further examination, are believed to have been 2 Austrian boys on the cusp of adulthood aged 17 and 18, with blonde hair and blue eyes. Each had a hole in their skull which only serves as a chilling testament to the brutality of the situation at the time. This occurrence is not an isolated incident, however, with many more remnants of the carnage appearing throughout the Central European region as the once icy regions turn to water due to rising temperatures. There is no doubt that more discoveries are yet to come to light, with each one providing a harrowing insight into the effects of our past. What do you make of these unsettling discoveries? The vast depth of space is something many of us struggle to comprehend. Though it is unsurprising that with such a huge area to explore, in so many different ways, there is so much that we still do not know. The constant developments and progress are exciting to say the least, and each piece of research feeds into the bigger projects the astronomical community are tackling as a whole. So today, we will be taking you through the latest space news you may have missed. Astronomers see a moon-forming disk around a super-Jupiter. As our scientific technology and capabilities develop, so do our opportunities to explore further and further out into space. Over the past few decades, exoplanets have shifted into a much more important position in our research into the universe. Many believe that the best chance of finding life out there is on exoplanets, and so likening the conditions of various exoplanets to those within our solar system is becoming more and more frequent. Now astronomers have found an exoplanet that has been dubbed Super Jupiter, as it is not too dissimilar from our very own gas giant. What's more is that there seems to be a protoplanetary disk forming around the exoplanet, something usually seen to form around stars, occasionally moons, but certainly never planets. Not as far as we know anyway, but still orbit stars the same way Earth and our other solar system planets do. Whilst the first one was confirmed and discovered in 1992, the last few years have seen huge progress in their exploration, bringing us closer and closer to new answers, new discoveries, and new information to work with. Astronomers have found over 4,000 exoplanets, with thousands of others awaiting confirmation too. And while for many, those comparable to Earth are the most fascinating, GQ Lupe b, an exoplanet that has been likened to a super Jupiter. GQ Lupe b has an orbit path 20 times wider than Jupiter has from our Sun, hence the rightfully earned title of Super Jupiter. It is around 500 light-years away from us here on Earth and clocks in at a significantly greater weight than Jupiter. What has caught the attention of astronomers more, though, is the protoplanetary disk surrounding the exoplanet. A is a circular formation of gas and dust. Astronomers hope this protoplanetary disk could help to clue us in on the formation of the giant exoplanet. Is it formed in the same way we know other planets to be formed? Or was it formed in a more similar manner to a star, hence the protoplanetary disk? Could this make the exoplanet something else entirely, such as a brown dwarf? To help answer some of these questions, Dr. Thomas Stoker from Leiden University is leading a team looking at the distinct trails of this protolunar disk surrounding the Super Jupiter. Dr. Stoker's team conducted their research using two high-quality advanced pieces of tech, the NACO telescope, which allows near-infrared imaging, and MUSE, a visible light spectroscope. NACO's thermal data revealed that the disk is at a far lower temperature than the atmosphere of GQ Lupe b. The researchers so far have presented the possibilities that a gap in the ring described as a cavity where a moon could be forming, or less excitingly that a magnetic field in the exoplanet is causing the strange patterns. The data presented from MUSE told a very different story. This spectroscope allowed the astronomers to observe the level of H-alpha radiation, meaning features from within the atmosphere could be pointed out. From these observations, it looks as though the already ginormous exoplanet could be growing. Some have suggested that the disk around the planet is providing materials for GQ Lupe b to continue growing. The next step in this research is to look at details in the mid-infrared range, something that is hoped to be available through the James Webb Space Telescope soon. NASA reveals there are more than 300 ways its James Webb Space Telescope could fail. NASA is inarguably the biggest, most influential space program in the world, and while others are coming forward with impressive new tech and research, NASA continues to develop their equipment and push limits further than we ever thought they could. We have all come to know and love the Hubble Space Telescope, which launched on April 24, 1990. But it's now time for an update, and this comes in the form of the James Webb Space Telescope, an impressive new telescope ready to update our telescope tech. The James Webb Space Telescope clocks in at an expensive ticket price of $10 billion. While this sky-high budget allows for the latest features and most advanced equipment, it also comes with high stakes. Though this expensive project seems to be raising a few question marks as of late. Unsurprisingly, with such a huge budget and advanced goal, the James Webb Space Telescope, also known as the JWST, is the most complicated venture NASA have made of late, so it is only realistic to expect there to be some delays, dilemmas and concerns involved while it is being developed. However, recently NASA announced that there are more than 300 opportunities for the JWST to fail as it goes into orbit, with the estimated number being 344 different places, times and ways slip-ups can occur. It was Mike Menzel, the lead mission systems engineer for NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland, who offered the number of 344 points of possible failure in the launch of the JWST. He also commented that around 80% of these opportunities are associated with deployment. In a statement, he said, "When I started in this business about 40 years ago, I remember one of the first lessons I got taught was to avoid deployments on orbit. Whilst this advice may be practical for most scenarios, in the cutting-edge, groundbreaking world of the James Webb Space Telescope, this simply is not possible to avoid." 28 minutes after the initial blast-off, the JWST will leave the launch vehicle and being what NASA described as the most complex sequence of deployments ever attempted in a single space mission. A series of complex maneuvers, including unfolding itself, pulling a number of levers, will all then happen in a carefully planned-out sequence lasting 14 years, every move of which presents a new chance for something to go wrong. These 144 release mechanisms all must work in precisely the manner in which they were intended for this to be a successful mission. A lot of pressure for the one telescope. The final assembly and testing for the JWST took place in August 2021 in Redondo Beach, California, in preparation for the 18th of December 2021 launch date. Not only does the complexity and the huge investments place pressure on the James Webb Space Telescope to be successful, but there is already a queue of research projects just waiting in line to be able to use the telescope once it is established. We can only hope that the JWST has a successful launch and deployment and ask that this high-stake domino lineup plays out as planned. Erupting Comet Cryomagma 29P Swasman Watchman. There are some strange things out there in our solar system, many of which we are undoubtedly yet to uncover and many of which remain a mystery. One of the strangest bodies out there is a comet, if you can even call it that. 29P Swasman Watchman was first spotted in 1927 and has been pushing the definition of comet since then. This comet orbits at a pace of just 26,000 miles per hour, compared to Earth's 67,000. This ball of ice that spans 37 miles in width is thought to be one of the most volcanically active things within our solar system. So with all that being said, can we really even call it a comet? Astronomers have been keeping an eye on this so-called comet over the years, with the British Astronomical Association having a team dedicated to tracking the eruptions. Current estimations suggest that the comet erupts 20 times every year, the most recent being one of the most impressive. Dr. Richard Miles, part of the team at the British Astronomical Association, said that within a span of only 56 hours, 4 eruptions took place in quick succession, creating a superburst. Looking over past data, it is thought that this is the most active that the comet has been in 40 years, with the comet releasing a great deal of cryomagma into space. Cryomagma is what is released during 29P Swasman Watchman's eruptions. This is a liquid that turns to solid once it has left the comet. It has been likened to the transition from molten rock to lava here on Earth. Dr. Tony Phillips, an astronomer, even suggested that the bizarre behavioral patterns of 29P Swasman Watchman were too odd to be given the name of a comet, suggesting the more suited name of giant space volcano to describe the comet. The world out there continues to be largely unexplored, with the ongoing research and developments giving us lots of next steps to research but leaving us with a handful of questions and a great deal of anticipation. What will come next? But what do you make of these fascinating discoveries? As researchers make attempts to pierce the veil on the shrouded history of our collective past, they have found strange artifacts and ancient stones that seem to tell peculiar stories and force experts to question previously held assumptions. Such odd discoveries are being found all around the world and point to impossible to explain moments in history that are left relatively unanswered even to this day. Grand Canyon National Park Service has estimated that over 5.9 million people visit the Grand Canyon every year, which makes it one of the most visited national parks in the United States. It was in 1919 that the Grand Canyon became a national park. It's over a mile deep and is 277 miles long and 18 miles wide, with the entire canyon measuring in at over 1,900 square miles, meaning that in total it's bigger than the state of Rhode Island. It's due to the vast, largely unexplored caves that has been whispered that the area is holding many secrets, with one of the lesser-known ones being that the area may have once been the home of an underground ancient civilization, with those who explored the area saying that artifacts were found and that they belonged to the ancient Egyptians. This interesting story starts in 1909, when an explorer by the name of G. Kincaid found a variety of strange artifacts while exploring the Grand Canyon. He was sent there by the Smithsonian Institution, saying that he was told to explore the large caverns that were covered by a large entrance that was almost inaccessible. The team was led by Smithsonian anthropologist S.A. Jordan, but it was Kincaid who had allegedly made the discovery. The team reported that once inside they found that the caves were in the shape of a wheel, saying that once they made their way inside the caverns they found various artifacts, including copper artifacts, statues, and many other things. The team also reported that the area was so big that it could have been inhabited by up to 50,000 people, noting that it was easily big enough to hold an ancient civilization. Although people living underground sounds like something from a movie, Derinkuyu is an underground city that was inhabited by people during the 8th and 7th centuries BC. Officials said the following about the discovery. Clearly, the builders of the structure were vastly skilled in their craft. But modern scholars tend to wonder why the ancient peoples living in the area built these underground cities so intently. End quote. So we know that people actively carved out underground caverns thousands of years ago. Once the team started to look closely at the artifacts, though, they noticed that they didn't match anything in their records and said that they didn't match any other artifacts that had been found in the region, most notably those of the Native Americans, but rather saying that these discoveries more closely resembled those that were coming out of Egypt. The big question was, how did these ancient artifacts end up in a deep cavern within the Grand Canyon? Or was there an ancient Egyptian civilization that had somehow made their way here? The Smithsonian later came forward and said that the team that had been sent down into the Grand Canyon didn't find anything, and that they had no proof that anything had been found. The only reply that the Smithsonian is given about the story is saying that they didn't find anything. They said the following on their website: "It didn't happen." End quote. Many theorists have said this isn't the first time that the Smithsonian has tried to hide the truth about some of these missions, further saying that they have actively hid evidence that goes against current narratives. The Smithsonian has denied this and said that no such artifacts have ever been found. Interestingly, this isn't the first time that the Smithsonian has been brought up when strange discoveries are being made. According to author Richard J. Dewhurst, he'd come across a number of strange reports made during the early 1800s and up until the early 1900s that described North American archaeologists' discoveries of giant humanoid skeletons and what was originally presumed to be a race of indigenous non-human creatures that seemed eerily similar to ancient depictions of a race of giants. For some unknown reason, the reports' data surrounding the reports and discoveries taken in for research, such as skeletons, ancient artifacts, and references to the culture of giants, were either completely covered up, destroyed, or hidden from the public at large. One of the first reports made apparent to the author Richard Dewhurst were the overwhelming number of archaeological discoveries made by common people during the expansion of New York. The first report, titled A History of Livingston Country, New York, 1824, detailed the discovery of an indigenous people's burial mound that uncovered massive humanoid skeletons, and that was discovered by a man named Jesse Stanley. A portion of the report described the following statement. About the year 1820, the mound was removed, and in its removal arrowheads, a brass kettle and nurse were thrown out. A number of skeletons were also disinterred. Among the bones was a human skeleton of enormous size, the jawbone of which was so large that Adam Hollisander placed it over his own chin and jaw. He was the largest man in the settlement, and his face was in proportion to the rest of his body. the Smithsonian began to adopt a policy of excluding any evidence of direct foreign influence in the Americas prior to Columbus. Some have argued that it was an attempt by the fractured post-Civil War government to downplay any regional and ethnic conflicts in the still fragile national rebuilding after the war. Others have pointed to the expansionist policies incorporated in the doctrine of manifest destiny and the desire to obtain the origins of the tribes being displaced and annihilated by a westward expansion. Still others have alleged that it was a direct religious policy adapted to counter the growing problems with the Mormon religion and the assertions that the lost tribes of Israel were found to be in America. The great crime and tragedy of this policy is hard to compute. One glaring result has been the suppression of hundreds of out-of-context finds, or submitted to the museum in native ignorance of the museum's official policy, and this is the suppression of alternative perspectives. To compound the problem, all major universities in the United States also adopted this policy in conjunction with the official position of the Smithsonian, thus making it impossible to study alternative American history and receive any grants or funding for pursuits of this nature. End quote. So do you agree with these comments? Or do you think that the Smithsonian is being unfairly targeted? Our blue marble is fragile, and we are constantly being reminded of this. In fact, one recent example came when NASA officials said that a large asteroid almost made contact with us, with them saying that they had no idea it was heading towards our planet. It's just one of the examples used by scientists that outlines how unpredictable space can be, with them saying that although we have teams and equipment across the world to help detect these things, every so often asteroids will slip through, leaving us completely unprepared. As stated on NASA's website, a near-Earth object is generally defined as an asteroid or a comet that approaches our planets less than 1.3 times the distance from Earth to the Sun. The Earth-Sun distance is around 93 million miles. Most near-Earth objects pose no peril at all. It's the small percentage of potentially hazardous asteroids that draws extra scrutiny. These objects are defined as those that approach Earth at less than half the Earth-Sun distance. Scientists and engineers are developing plans for warning systems and diversion tactics, just in case an asteroid should ever be found in an orbit that could endanger us. NASA has said that an asteroid will make itself known above our planet today. The object known as 2003 SD-220 has been described as an elongated space rock that's around 3 times the size of the Empire State Building. NASA has said that the asteroid will make its closest approach on December 17th, where it will come within 3 million miles of Earth. And although that doesn't sound close, it's close enough to make this object a near-Earth object. A researcher at Arizona State University's School of Earth and Space Exploration said the following: imagine Earth is the size of a tennis ball, and our moon would be about the size of a dime, and it would be 6 feet away from the Earth, and this asteroid would then be 60 to 80 feet away from the tennis ball. It still comes closer than many other asteroids. But because we know its orbit so well, we've actually classified its risk as low to zero. NASA said the following on their website: 2003 SD-220 was discovered by Lau Observatory near Earth Object Search on September 29, 2003, and was subsequently linked with 2000 AD-229, which was also discovered by Lau Observatory near Earth Object on January 6, 2000. It's currently known as 2003 SD-220. In 2003, SD-220 has an extremely slow rotation period of roughly 12 days, and light curves suggest non-principal axis rotation. Radar images of Goldstone and Arecibo in 2015 and 2018 revealed a highly elongated and very slowly rotating object that is consistent with expectations from the light curves. The 2015 images provided a small number of snapshots that did not cover much rotation, so significant fraction of the surface has not yet been seen. An estimated diameter of 0.02 kilometers has been given. 2003 SD-220 will approach within 0.036 astronomical units on December 17, 2021, when it will be one of the strongest radar targets of the year. With signal-to-noise ratios per run at Goldstone strong enough for high-resolution imaging. An extensive campaign is scheduled at Goldstone starting November 22nd and spanning several weeks. End quote. NASA has just launched their DART spacecraft, which stands for Double Asteroid Redirection Test, and has announced that it's set to crash into a targeted asteroid on purpose. However, they've also been vocal about the fact that there's certain asteroids that we won't be able to stop, saying that some of them are so big that no amount of ramming will move them off their course. US and European researchers were given several months to calculate what would happen if a large asteroid was heading towards us, but rather worryingly they came to the conclusion that not even a nuclear warhead would be able to stop a large asteroid. During the study, astronomers used radar systems and data imaging to come to this conclusion, determining that 6 months would not be enough time for the space agency to come up with a plan to stop an asteroid, and even using things like spacecrafts and warheads wouldn't make a difference. This is worrying, as in the past some asteroids had been detected mere days before flying past Earth, meaning that although we have all of this equipment, every so often asteroids do slip through the net. And as of right now, there's nothing we can do to stop them. This exercise was called Space Mission Options for the Hypothetical Asteroid Impact Scenario and involved 9 NASA scientists who went over different scenarios about what would happen if an asteroid did approach us. Lynn Johnson, NASA's Planetary Defense Officer, said the following about the exercise: "Each time we participate in an exercise of this nature, we learn more about who the key players are in a disaster event and who needs to know what information. These exercises ultimately help the planetary defense community communicate with each other and with our governments to ensure we are all coordinated should a potential impact threat be identified in the future." End quote. Dr. Paul Chodos, who is the current director of the Center for Near-Earth Object Studies, said the following: "Hypothetical asteroid impact exercises provide opportunities for us to think about how we would respond in the event that a sizable asteroid is found to have a significant chance of impacting our planet. Details of the scenario, such as the probability of the asteroid impact, where and when the impact might occur, are released to participants in a series of steps over the days of the conference to see how a real situation might evolve." End quote. NASA ended by saying that as each year passes, the chances of Earth being hit by a large asteroid increases. So they've said that it's in humanity's best interest to get a plan together in order to stop this. So what do you make of these announcements? The universe presents us with a huge range of theories, concepts, and research opportunities. Everyone views the universe differently, and while some believe there are more than one, some choose to not ponder the overwhelming vastness for too long, and some dive headfirst into all the latest studies and breakthroughs. We are all part of the same universe. Exploring the world beyond our homes on Earth can seem impossible to comprehend, though with every bit of research we draw a little closer to unraveling some more of the puzzle. So today we will be taking a look at 3 interesting physics discoveries that have developed our understanding of what is out there, from the smallest particles to the biggest stars to searching entire galaxies. Physicists detect ghost particles in the Large Hadron Collider for the very first time. Particle physics may not sound like the most interesting concept, but there are some fascinating developments happening in the field as of late November 2021, bound to be the interest of even the least scientifically minded among us. Particle physics aims to gain insight into the universe by looking at the smallest units we can in order to gain an insight as to how things work on a much larger scale. However, not all particles are made equal. Some are much more elusive and much trickier to study than others, making them all the more exciting. Back in school, you might have discussed subatomic particles looking at electrons with a negative charge, protons with a positive charge, and neutrons with no charge, all found within an atom. Well, a neutrino is not too dissimilar to this. Neutrinos are subatomic particles that are fairly similar to electrons. However, they differ in 2 key ways. They have no electrical charge, and their mass is so minuscule that it could even be considered to be zero. What is most unique about neutrinos is the sheer quantity of them. We have billions of them moving through each one of us right now. They are the single most abundant particle in the universe. However, despite the huge numbers and then moving through the universe at quite literally the speed of light, it is very rare that neutrino interacts with any sort of matter, making them incredibly difficult to detect. Due to their hard-to-prove nature, but us knowing that they are there, they have earned the nickname ghost particles, though their supernatural status may be diminishing in light of a new study. The Large Hadron Collider, the most recent addition to the CERN accelerator complex, is the world's largest and most powerful particle accelerator. It works through superconducting magnets and is based in the European Organization for Nuclear Research in Switzerland. Jonathan Fong, a physicist with the University of California, Irvine, the co-leader of the Phaser collaboration, said, had ever been seen at a particle collider. 6 neutrino interactions were detected by the collider and were spotted using the neutrino subdetector, Phaser Nu. This research shows us the sheer capability of the $4.75 billion machine and opens up new doors for researching the little-known neutrinos at such high energies, hopefully letting us continue to dive deeper into their roles, purpose, and structure. While we have not detected neutrinos in any particle collider before now, we have managed to see them interact very rarely in some other circumstances, namely IceCube found in America, Super Kamiokande in a Japanese research project, and Mini Boon at Fermilab, Illinois. These all used highly sensitive photodetector arrays. When a neutrino interacts with other particles in entirely dark environments, in what is often described as a shower of light. This light is what the photodetector arrays can pick up on in the rare instance that neutrinos do interact. While this research is great, there are of course limits in how much we can learn from this. The next step was to try to study the ghost particles in particle colliders. The collider neutrons produced from the decay of hadrons have extremely high energies. The ghost particles are not well documented as it is, but the study of them at high energies is even more limited. The subdetector used, Phaser Nu, is an emulsion detector. This means that plates of lead and tungsten are fitted with a layer of emulsion in between. The neutrinos then collide with the nuclei of the lead and tungsten plates. The particles produced here leave evidence behind in the emulsion layers that can then be observed. The plates develop in a manner likened to photographic film developing. Then the traces left in the plates are available for analysis, with tracks left like footprints of the neutrinos. After determining that the particles observed were indeed neutrinos, the science does not stop there. There are different neutrino varieties, electron, muon, and tau, as well as antineutrinos. With more developments in the works at CERN, it is hoped that the next stages of detecting neutrinos is in the not-too-distant future. Furthermore, scientists hope that similar processes and technology could lead them to signs of even more difficult things to detect, like dark photons, a hypothetical component that aids in the explanation of dark matter. Evidence of supernovae found in ancient tree rings. While all research into space starts from here on Earth, from building equipment to analyzing data, it is not often that the research is in the Earth. But it seems as though looking at trees could give us some answers to how the end of supernova impacts the rest of space around it. Researchers from the University of Colorado, Boulder have found a correlation between the radiocarbon levels, tracked by the rings in ancient trees and the end of massive stars, supernovae in space. When stars reach the end of their life cycle, there is often a large explosion of sorts, releasing great quantities of high-energy gamma radiation. What researchers are beginning to ask is how often these sorts of events occur. Various techniques have turned in mixed results, with some suggesting 3 per century. But the last observed event being 400 years ago, though it seems the trees here on Earth could have some more clues. When the cosmic rays from space reach Earth, they first interact with the upper atmosphere, where there are lots of nitrogen atoms. This produces a nuclear reaction that results in radiocarbon, and the quantities of radiocarbon in the atmosphere can be tracked by analyzing tree rings. The general trend is that every now and then a large spike will occur that then gradually decreases over the following years, only to spike again. It's possible that the spikes could be from solar flares or storms, though the current researchers are theorizing that the end of a supernovae could be behind this fluctuating trend. The team used the nebula left after the supernovae exploded to determine all the known events in the last 40,000 years to then compare this to the spike in the tree rings. They found 8 coordinating instances, one of which saw a 3% increase in tree ring radiocarbon levels. While this may not sound like much, it is a significant increase. Nothing is definitive yet, but this certainly does present a new avenue for research. A small black hole is discovered hiding in a star cluster. We often hear talk of black holes in sci-fi films on the big screen, how they are dangerous or potential portals. While these tropes are all good fun, the magical nature of real-world black holes is much more limited, though it is still exciting when a new one is discovered. A black hole is a point in space where the gravitational force is so strong that even light cannot get out. They can sometimes form from the end of the star's life and due to a high volume of matter being squashed into a small physical space. The lack of light in black holes makes them impossible to simply see. It instead takes dedicated equipment and teams to locate black holes and observe the differences in their behaviors. This is part of why it is so exciting when one is found. In a satellite galaxy of our very own Milky Way. Galaxies like the Milky Way are orbited by stars and star clusters, as well as other galaxies named satellite galaxies. It was in one of these satellite galaxies that star cluster NGC 1850 was found to be hiding the newly discovered black hole. The black hole was detected when one of the stars in NGC 1851 of the brightest star clusters in the Large Magellanic Cloud was seen to be behaving in an odd motion. This star was the odd one out, with the other members of the cluster behaving in the expected manner. The European Southern Observatory's Very Large Telescope, based in Chile, was employed, and it was then that it was determined that the gravitational influence from the black hole is what had this strange impact upon the star. Not only is it exciting that a black hole has been discovered, but this is also the first time this method of detection has revealed a black hole outside of our galaxy. It is hoped that the same technique could help track down other more hidden black holes that may have gone unnoticed. Another useful piece of research we could be able to delve into from this is looking at how black holes form and develop over time, as this is another area that we do not know a great deal about. The world out there remains so unexplored. We cannot wait to see what answers we stumble across next. But what do you make of these interesting discoveries? National parks are some of the most beautiful places one can visit, but at the same time they're also full of hidden crevices, loose boulders, harsh weather conditions, and predators. This means that every year people sometimes vanish into thin air never to be seen again. Yellowstone National Park is one place where people have been reported missing. However, what many aren't aware of is that many of these disappearances aren't covered by the news. So the vast majority of people don't know that these individuals are missing. One such example of this is the disappearance of Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell decided to go hiking at Yellowstone National Park, but he never returned. It was on the 6th of April, 1991, when Dan's friend dropped him and his dog off at the Hill Royne Creek trailhead. The 47-year-old was intending to collect antlers on his hike to Jardine, Montana. However, he never reached his final destination. His girlfriend called local authorities, reporting that Dan was overdue from his hike. A large-scale search commenced 3 days after his disappearance, yet no one found any sign of him. The National Park Service, the U.S. Forest Service, and the FBI were all involved in the unsuccessful ground and aerial investigation. However, Dan's two brothers publicly stated that they were not satisfied with the search. They believed that their brother may have suffered a more sinister fate. They felt it was suspicious no one had found any remains of Dan or his dog. They suspected their brother may have been murdered by some dubious people he dealt with in the illegal antler trade. Rob Campbell publicly stated he believed his brother had been buried in the park. Dan allegedly collected antlers to pay his bills and funded a move to White Sulphur Springs. Authorities have speculated that he may have purposely disappeared to avoid his dismal financial situation. Yet Dan's family insists he's not the type to deliberately vanish. In the months following his disappearance, his brothers urged authorities to conduct lie detector tests on Dan's acquaintances. However, this request was denied by investigators. 9 years later, in 2000, his family filed a lawsuit against Park County Sheriff Charles Johnson, claiming he botched the investigation. They were not happy with the sheriff treating the case solely as a disappearance, rather than a murder. After employing a private investigator, they acquired evidence stating that there was 14 other antler hunters in the area during their time. One of them even stated they heard 2 shots. Most of this evidence has since been disposed of or lost. During the original search, firearms and ammunition were seized from some of the antler hunters in the area. However, these items were returned to their owners without fingerprinting or investigation. No further clues of Dan's whereabouts eventuated from these liens. While he was an experienced outdoorsman, park officials believe that Yellowstone's rough terrain could be challenging for even the best hikers. Its dense foliage and uneven ground could easily conceal a person, making it difficult for searchers to find any signs of life. Even after their large-scale effort, authorities stated they had no clue about Dan's whereabouts. While it may be unclear what happened to Dan, heavy snowstorms and high winds hit the air in the days following his disappearance, slimming the chances of finding him alive. Dan Campbell's disappearance continues to be a mystery for authorities. Campbell was last seen in Sweetgrass County, Montana on April 6, 1991. He lived in Big Timber, Montana, and his friends dropped him off with his dog at Hellboring Creek Trailhead in Yellowstone National Park. Campbell was apparently planning to hike through Jardine, Montana, but he never arrived in Jardine and has never been heard from again. The search began on April 9th, but turned up no indication of Campbell or his dog's whereabouts. Few details are available in his case, but it's likely he got lost or injured and passed away somewhere in Yellowstone's backcountry. Retired park rangers have also detailed some of the strange things that they've encountered while working, with one individual going on to say the following: "I worked for the National Park Service for over 25 years, and during this time I encountered many strange things, along with hearing a bunch of bizarre stories that never got answered. Some of the strangest disappearances involve those that seem to vanish into thin air, leaving no tracks, no hiking gear, no signs that there was even there in the first place. We've had stories come in from people who've said that they've somehow moved thousands of meters in a matter of seconds, with some saying that they blacked out and woke up somewhere entirely different, again saying that there were no signs around them that could have explained how this happened. Although these are brushed aside by the National Park Service, they still happened. And sometimes it messes with your head because it's asked along with the individual who's left asking questions. They get brushed aside because they don't sound realistic. But people are experiencing strange things in national parks. I think at this point it's important to note that many disappearances do come down to people not respecting these locations and not coming equipped with the right gear. There are many things in these national parks that can make a trip go sideways, but there's also some disappearances that never get answers. Something that hardly gets mentioned is that of animals that were distorted by troubled individuals. This happened on a number of occasions to not only myself but also my coworkers. Although it's obvious that these were done by people, they always seem to get away with it." End quote. Disappearances of people in national parks have gained notoriety ever since the Missing for MoMAs published. If there's one certainty, it is that at least one person a year will go missing at any of the 419 national parks. Although the actual annual number is estimated to be over 1,000 missing people. There's a plethora of things that can go wrong when visiting the vast wilderness. The cruelty of nature is no joke, and many people find themselves on the losing side of a battle against survival. Many cases can be speculated upon, and although some of these cases do eventually get solved, there's many that will remain a mystery. Though the IBS or Investigative Services branch of the law enforcement generally try to solve cases as efficiently and quickly as possible, this sadly is not always the case. And most often than not, cases tend to grow cold for months or years afterwards. So what do you make of these stories? And what do you make of those that seem to vanish into thin air? Mysteries surround us. They are everywhere, and every day we come closer to brand new, breathtaking, and extraordinary discoveries that shape the way we see the world and cosmos we inhabit. So today we'll be taking a look at 3 brilliant discoveries. Mysterious lost city discovered in the Cambodian jungle. The Cambodian jungle is a place of much intrigue, but the greatest discovery by far was that of the lost city of Mahendra Parvata. Archaeologists utilized laser technology, combined with ground surveys, to find the lost city placed within the Phnom Kulen Mountains. The researchers involved stated Despite knowing that the Phnom Mountains likely hid capital city, archaeologists have had difficulty accessing the region. The mountains are covered in dense vegetation, and they were one of the last strongholds of Khmer Rouge guerrillas until the 1990s. Landmines and unexploded ordnance continue to pose a threat to communities living and working in the mountains and complicate archaeological research. The LiDAR laser was used for this expedition, which provides researchers with information detailing the distance to the Earth's surface and reveals areas overgrown by nature. LiDAR is an incredibly useful tool also used for a myriad of other applications, including in vehicles, as it is what allows modern cars to have 360-degree cameras. The lost city of Mahendraparvata itself was established somewhere between the 8th and 9th century AD and was a part of the long-since-gone Khmer Empire. However, most archaeologists fervently believe that the city of Mahendraparvata is older than the megacity Angkor, also of the Khmer Empire. LiDAR has shown that there is a hydraulic architectural design in Mahendraparvata, although it was never completed. Researchers claimed this meant that the water management system was not sufficient to support irrigated rice agriculture, which may suggest the city did not last long as a Khmer power center. Even though the reservoir at Mahendraparvata was not functional and may have inspired the vast artificial lakes that would become a defining feature of Angkor. Aside from the lost city itself, researchers went to check out the mound fields surrounding the site. It is an area composed of 366 mounds, all in strange geometric patterns of 15 groups. At the site, archaeologists discovered ceramics and building remnants from the 10th century AD. Although the purpose of the mounds remains unknown, it is likely that, whatever they were, the mounds were built later than the majority of Mahendraparvata. In a different yet related project to the finding of Mahendraparvata, scientists found more information that explains why the city of Angkor fell. The study argued that instead of a catastrophic event, as many people tend to assume, the city fell gradually through the course of a certain period of time. Was once the powerhouse of the jungle Khmer Empire, which at one point was believed to house 1 million people. The fall of Angkor could be related to the fall of Mahendraparvata and all neighboring cities of the empire. Some researchers believe that Angkor fell due to surrounding states invading or attacking the empire's assets around 1431, and this is currently the leading theory. A chunk of satellite almost hit the International Space Station. Earlier this month, the ISS had no choice but to skillfully shift itself out of the path of collision with a remnant of a satellite among other space trash. The crew residing aboard the International Space Station increased the urgency of the situation and meant that the ISS had to abruptly change orbit on November 11th to ensure the safety of its temporary crew. The station has been running for 23 years, and within those 2 decades, it has had around 30 near collisions with various trash and debris floating around space that needed the station to shift its orbit or urgently move in some way. 3 such almost collisions happened last year in 2020, but in May 2021, the station suffered a genuine hit to its arm. The damage caused by a tiny piece of cosmic rubble caused a 5 mm hole to appear in the station. The Phongyang 1C satellite created for weather monitoring purposes was shattered by a missile test, creating over 3,500 pieces of dangerous space junk that now flows through the cosmos. Unfortunately for the International Space Station, many of the Phongyang 1C's fragments have made their way close to it over the years. A Russian Progress supply spacecraft that was fortunately docked the ISS at the time was able to fire rockets and blast the station away from the course of collision with Phongyang 1C merely 6 minutes before it would have been hit. The rockets pushed the ISS out of the way and increased its speed by 0.7 meters per second. This, in turn, raised the station's orbit by 1.2 kilometers. The ISS's orbit is about 400 kilometers high. Astronauts and cosmonauts worry for the future of space travel because of the growing issues surrounding space debris. The debris threatens all working satellites and space stations positioned in our low orbit and, such as on November 11th, can severely endanger astronauts' lives. The International Space Station is particularly endangered, however, as it is the largest space station currently in space, and orbits at a fast speed of 7.66 kilometers per second. Its fast pace, combined with large pieces of debris floating through space, could form a collision that could cause irreversible damage to the space station, not to mention the risk it would entail for any crew members on board. As more satellites are put out into the Earth's orbit, the more obstacles there are to look out for. As of today, there are nearly 5,000 satellites in use in our orbit. SpaceX claims it wants to reach a goal of sending 12,000 satellites into space, currently having 2,000 out in orbit. The company also states they'd like to put 40,000 satellites into orbit at some point in the future. It's estimated there are 330 million space junk objects, between 1 millimeter and 1 centimeter large, and yet another million between 1 centimeter and 10 centimeters. At high, even the smallest hit from a tiny debris object can cause harm to the station, likewise with all other working satellites. It is impossible to keep track of all the space junk and currently impossible for us to get rid of it. Still, as the problem increases, scientists are working to find a way to remove larger pieces from all the space junk. Mysterious kick just after the Big Bang may have created dark matter. Scientists believe that matter and antimatter should be balanced. They are counterparts, and as most materials that are opposites, they ought to cancel each other out on contact. All the universe's matter should have been destroyed as soon as it came into existence as a result of touching with antimatter. But, as we know, that's not the case, and there is a known imbalance in space when it comes to matter and antimatter. Scientists now theorize that when the universe was in its infancy, a kick was responsible for producing far more matter than antimatter. It's possible that this imbalance between them made dark matter. Dark matter has a pull on everything, yet it does not interact with anything, even light. All we know is it exists and makes up 80% of our cosmos. But how it works, how it came to be, and what it does is still a mystery. And yet we also know that regular matter has nothing in common with dark matter, which is, as of now, outside our understanding of physics. It is believed that for a short while antimatter and matter were balanced, but something caused that balance to shift and it filled the universe with matter. Scientists do not know when this happened, if it even did. It is now thought that perhaps the unbalance of matter and antimatter is connected to the birth of dark matter. It would make sense for these processes to be connected, but without proof one can only speculate and study the situation. A study by ArcSiv from 2020 alleges that space relies on a baryon number symmetry. Baryons are composed of quarks, protons, and neutrons, and it claims that all baryons must be equal in interaction with baryons possessing antiquarks. If this paper is accepted by peers, it will suggest that symmetry is an aspect of almost all things in space, yet it suggests that in the early cosmos the kick specifically pushed antimatter and matter out of proportion. In physics, if symmetry is shattered, it creates what is called a Goldstone boson. So if the theory is correct, it adds evidence to the idea that dark matter is a product of the barrier number of matters breaking. The balance between dark matter and matter then suggests they are indeed related. But this theorized model of understanding dark matter does not help with the split between dark and normal matter. 80% dark matter and 20% matter. They are in rough balance, and it's thought that it's because they share their origins. This unknown origin or kick is yet to be theorized and for now is being held as a placeholder. But what do you make of these three mysteries? We are undoubtedly living in the age of technology, and evidence of this is visible all around us. No matter where you look, it seems that technology is leading to advances in science, discoveries about humanity, and solutions to seemingly insurmountable problems. From space discoveries to artificial intelligence and humanoid robots, it is an exciting time to be alive. So today, we will be looking at three recent interesting discoveries, what they mean for our understanding and use of technology. AI discovers over 300 unknown exoplanets in Kepler telescope data. Every day it seems that we rely on artificial intelligence more and more to make discoveries about the aspects of the world around us that are invisible or incomprehensible to the human eye and brain. Recently, an artificial intelligence algorithm astonished scientists with its discovery of more than 300 exoplanets as a result of its analysis of data from the retired Kepler telescope. The Kepler Space Telescope was NASA's first spacecraft dedicated to the search for exoplanet life and orbited the cosmos in order to observe and record data on the thousands of bodies that inhabit space outside of our solar system. Although it became defunct in late 2018, the Kepler telescope gathered an incredible amount of data, and manually sorting through it in search of signs of undiscovered exoplanets is a daunting process that results in many false positives. Exoplanets can be discovered by observing small temporary decreases in the brightness of stars, which could be caused by an exoplanet orbiting in front of the star blocking its light. However, not all of these decreases in brightness are due to exoplanets, and it is often incredibly difficult to sort out the false positives from the actual exoplanets. When observing the data and locating the site of a potential exoplanet, scientists would first have to calculate the light curve in order to discover the size of the hypothesized planet in relation to the star and compare this to how long it takes the body to cross the sun. Oftentimes this eliminates many candidates, but this highly involved verification process does not always take out all of the false positives that may slip through the cracks when manually applied by the researchers. Because the process is so tedious and complex, exoplanets identified by scientists analyzing the original data are highly likely to turn out to be false positives. However, when researchers applied to the new artificial intelligence algorithm ExoMiner to the data, it was able to apply the same process to the entire dataset in order to say for certain whether a dim star was truly an exo. The artificial intelligence was able to quickly and accurately scour the dense amount of data in a way that is impossible to accomplish by hand due to the intelligence system's neural network characteristics that allow it to learn from its actions in order to improve its abilities. In fact, in addition to the planets already discovered by countless hours of researchers poring over the data, ExoMiner project lead Hamid Valazadigan made a statement speaking to the high confidence that researchers can place in ExoMiner, saying that when ExoMiner says something is a planet, you can be sure it's a planet. ExoMiner is highly accurate and in some ways more reliable than both existing machine classifiers and human experts it's meant to emulate because of the biases that come with human labeling. Because of the incredible success seen with ExoMiner's interpretation of the Kepler telescope data, researchers are looking at the possibility of applying the principles to data collected from other telescopes and satellites, as well as potentially adding it to the search for extraterrestrial life. It seems that this exciting new technology has the potential to rapidly increase our ability to map and understand the regions of space outside the reach of our satellites. Tech firm will pay you £150,000 to use your face on its robots. One thing that robots are not often described as is a friendly face, but a New York-based tech company is looking to change that by adding your friendly face to its robots. Currently, humanoid robots are often given computer-generated faces that notably lack the genuine emotions and expressions seen in real-life human faces. However, the world-renowned company called Promobot is launching an upcoming project that is offering a financial incentive for you to put your face onto one of their new robots, which will be launched throughout North America and the Middle East in public spaces such as hotels, shopping centers, and airports. If you would like to encounter your electronic clone in one of these spaces, you could potentially earn a large amount of financial compensation, as Promobot is offering £150,000 for the privilege of using your face on one of their robots. It appears as though race and gender are of no importance to the future robots. As to qualify, the company has stated that all you need is to be at least 25 years old with a kind and friendly appearance. However, the process of giving your digital likeness to a robot is slightly more involved than one might think. After signing a license agreement that allows the company unlimited use of their appearance, Promobot will take scans of the individual's face and body in order to generate a 3D model to apply to the robot's external features. You will also have to dedicate at least 100 hours of material, as the robot with your likeness will also have your voice when it communicates with customers in its eventual home. As their creations are already known for their eerie similarities to real-life humans and have been implemented in various roles across 43 countries. It hopes that having access to a realistic 3D model for its robots will help to further expand the reach of robot workers acting as administrators, promoters, guides, and friendly concierges across the world. This all sounds highly futuristic. The company aims to have its first entirely humanoid robots out in the public by 2023 at the latest, so an era of friendly, helpful robots who are exact replicas of normal individuals elsewhere in the world will likely be upon us sooner than one would think. Although Promobot would have access to the likeness and voice of the brave volunteer essentially forever, it might be worth it to be able to walk through a shopping mall or airport and encounter a friendly robot clone of yourself. Earth could have its own Saturn-like ring band due to space junk. It seems that every day we discover more and more side effects of the growing industrialization and pollution on Earth, and current evidence suggests that the debris that has accumulated on Earth is also impacting outer space as well. NASA recently released some ominous statistics claiming that there are over 100 million pieces of debris larger than a millimeter currently orbiting the Earth, with thousands of these pieces the size of a baseball or larger. Scientists estimate that, based on the gravitational pull of Earth exerted on these pieces of space debris, eventually our planet could have a massive set of rings not unlike the famous rings of Saturn. Only our rings will be composed of our own detritus. These growing rings cause more than a few problems for those seeking to explore the solar system, as well as those of us stuck here on Earth. For starters, the trash is flying around the planet at incredibly high speeds, and there is so much of it that it is becoming increasingly difficult for satellites and spacecraft to navigate around. Because of the high speeds of the debris, an atmospheric collision with a spacecraft could be devastating, while a fast-moving piece of space detritus that manages to make it through the atmosphere could wreak havoc on the planet and those of us down below. Items headed towards Earth's surface burn up as they pass through the atmosphere, but this is not always the case, and the more trash that accumulates around our planet, the greater the chances that pieces could survive the fall to Earth and greatly injure those of us below. But how are we to go about cleaning up the mess above our heads before it conglomerates into an enormous ring that causes even more issues? This is a delicate issue, as the debris is spinning and orbiting at such fast speeds that many normal methods such as grabbing the larger pieces with a robotic arm are not feasible, as the debris would just destroy the equipment. One solution proposed by Jake Abbott, a mechanical engineering professor at the University of Utah, was published in the science journal Nature and suggests using magnets to attract the debris instead of attempting to grab it. He proposes that this theory will work even on debris that does not have a metal component, because of the electric eddy currents generated by spinning non-magnetic objects and activated with spinning magnets. Eddy currents are swirling, magnetically induced currents that circulate as loops of electrical current within a conductor. Although it is not currently clear whether Abbott's proposition will be effective as a way to begin the space clear-up, or where all of the collected detritus will end up, it is ultimately the first step in solving a looming problem that is only set to get worse if not addressed. What do you make of these three science advances? NASA and other space agencies have set their focus on Mars, with them saying that within 10 years humans could be living there. The bold plans have been made by SpaceX and NASA, with Elon Musk reporting that by the year 2026, he's highly confident that he will be able to land people on Mars. Some people, though, are skeptical about these plans, with some researchers saying that the company has failed to answer some lingering questions, including how they're going to deal with prolonged space travel, radiation, and weightlessness. However, as of right now, SpaceX plans to carry on with their Mars mission, with Elon saying the following: "We don't want to be one of those single-planet species. We want to be a multi-planet species." End quote. In recent years, though, countless strange photographs have been captured on the. It's important to note that NASA and other space agencies have said that these discoveries are not of interest, and that the most likely answer for what people are seeing is things that naturally occur on the planet, like rocks, mountains, and boulders. Although NASA has put forward this explanation, it hasn't stopped people from sharing their opinions. One of the most interesting photographs that does the rounds on social media is this one, and it allegedly shows three giant conical towers. Interestingly, the three large objects that appear to be protruding from the Martian surface were captured back in 1999, and since then amateur researchers have used it as proof that something is happening on Mars, and that NASA is aware of what these things are. Those that have seen these photographs have said that Mars is scattered with strange objects, but note that the large towers are some of the most interesting ones. Further saying that whatever these things are, they're clearly big. That it even looked as though they had been placed in a line, with some comparing it to the pyramids in Giza that are aligned with the stars. The alleged tails can be found in a region known as Terra Meridiani, and coincidentally this is a region that has been explored by the rover, yet we've had not dated photographs from the rover itself, which is strange as these objects clearly protrude out the ground and wouldn't be hard to see. The next issue is those who have looked into these objects revealed the enormous size of them, saying that when measured they came in at 4.8 kilometers or 2.9 miles in length. They say that such structures cannot be created by nature and that there's nothing around them that looks similar. The next thing they did was use Google Maps to get a more detailed photograph, and this is when people thought these things must be artificial and not created by nature, saying that there's nothing around the area that you can compare these to and that there's nothing else on Mars that looks like these things, further noting that they don't match any other mountains on the Martian surface. Another interesting thing to note is that researchers compare these images to older photographs that had been taken from the region, and although they said that you can still see the structures in old archives, they noted that it looked as though NASA had made the area fuzzy, so that it was harder to see the structures. Although this might sound like an unfair claim, this isn't the first time that NASA has been accused of covering up certain areas. In fact, the agency themselves have said they've done this in the past. One amateur researcher said the following about the image. All this shows me is that we're looking at large towers of artificial origin. It's not like one of these things was found. We have 3 large towers in a row that are standing tall. The ground around them is flat and there's nothing like them in the area. They are what they look like. Large towers. End quote. As mentioned, NASA don't agree and have said that although these images look interesting, people are going to be disappointed because what they're looking at is pareidolia, where the mind tricks us into thinking that something is there when it isn't, and said that they've never seen an image of Mars that's made them think that it's nothing more than a rock. Believers don't buy this though, and have said that this is a standard reply from the agency, and said that they should investigate these claims and take photographs, rather than just talking. Interestingly, this is what China's U-2 rover is doing at the moment, after it has spotted a strange-looking object on the far side of the moon. Various news networks picked up the story after it started the trend online, calling the mysterious-looking object a heart. On December 3, 2021, it photographed a strange-looking object in the distance, leaving many wondering what it was. The Chinese website OurSpace was one of the first places to publish the photographs. Since its discovery, it has been given various different names, including the monolith and the cube. But as of right now, no one is sure about what this thing is. The YouTube team, though, did say that it was a strange discovery, and that they've pointed their rover towards it and want to investigate further. Something that was praised by many people was usually these types of discoveries that downplayed as being nothing more than many scientists and researchers have said, though this likely are wrong, and that due to the photographs being blurry, it's giving off the illusion that it's a large archway. The team do plan to investigate it, but haven't given any further updates. So what do you make these interesting photographs? Our world is still very much a mystery. Each day strange things are discovered, showing us that we still have a lot to learn about the things around us. One photograph that's doing the rounds on social media is this one, and it allegedly shows a huge object moving along the sands of the Sahara Desert. Those who spotted this strange object questioned how something so large could move such a distance. One user suggested that this large object might be a stone, and that it fell from one of the nearby mountains and caused this large skid mark. The issue is when measuring the skid mark, it goes on for over 981 meters, leaving some to question whether wind will be able to carry this object such a long distance. Another user said the following: could this have come from space? To me, it looks like it could be a meteorite, and the trail behind it was caused when the object came crashing to the ground. End quote. This may not be such a far-fetched idea. After all, one of the oldest meteorites ever discovered was found in the Sahara Desert, with scientists estimating that the space rock was over 4.6 billion years old. The researchers have said that the meteorite will be able to shed some light on the early solar system. Initial studies in 2021 revealed that the chunk was actually from a protoplanet and that it formed before Earth. It seems that the Sahara Desert is a hotspot for these early space objects, as another meteorite was found in the Sahara Desert by a team of researchers. Dr. Jutta Zipfel from the Max Planck Institute for Chemistry revealed that this was a Martian and that this was an important discovery because it was the first Martian meteorite found in the Sahara Desert. Others who saw the photographs suggested more out there theories, saying that it could be an advanced craft that crashed into the ground, noting that the object itself doesn't look like a rock or part of the nearby mountains, saying that whatever this thing is must have been big because the width of the skid mark is over 40 meters. Interestingly, as some have pointed out, the area where the skid mark starts shows no sign of a mountain or raised area, which has led some to say that if this was a rock from a mountain, you'd see the mountain along with a chunk missing. But we can't see that in any of the photos. As of right now, these photographs are still generating discussions online, with people confused as to how such a large structure would be able to slide across the Sahara Desert. Those who put forward the idea of the object moving via the use of ice sheets or wet areas should note that on average the Sahara gets between 0 and 2 inches of rain per year, although some locations go without rain for several years. Although this explanation may seem like the most likely answer, it's unlikely that such a large object would be able to move across the sands of the Sahara with so little water. Even this theory is disputed among researchers, with some saying that more data is needed, and noting that the stones that had been moved via water are very small, under 20 inches in diameter. The object just photographed in the Sahara Desert measures in at over 84 meters in length. As some have pointed out as well, let's say that this object is a rock. Natural crushed rocks that measure between 10 and 20 inches were approximately 1.1 tons per cubic meter, with solid rock measuring in at 2.5 to 3 tons per cubic meter. One user said the following: "I'm not saying that this is something mysterious, but how could such a large object be moved by wind or rain? On top of this, there's no mountain behind it that this could have fallen from if this object was coming from the other side. If this object was coming from the other side where there's visible mountains, then we could say that this was a large rock. But again, that doesn't explain how such a large rock was able to slide almost 1,000 meters on sand. This is one of those situations where the more you think about it, the stranger it gets." End quote. This isn't the first time that rocks have been seen moving on their own. Although the sliding rocks in Death Valley are nowhere near the sides of the object I just spoke about, the Death Valley sailing stones are a strange phenomenon recorded nowhere else on the face of the earth. It appears at different times of the day. The rocks will begin to move and inscribe long tracks along the smooth valley floor without any human or animal intervention. There are many different hypotheses of explanations that may be causing the movement of the stones. At times these lines can move straight for long distances, turn around or turn 90-degree angles. Many researchers believe that the movement of the rocks could be caused by a balance of very specific conditions. The naturally formed allow the rocks to slowly glide by using the frozen sheets of ice beneath them, and the perfect wind conditions the valley creates against the stones. Oddly enough, no definitive proof of the movement of the stones exists. There are no recordings or direct monitoring of the rocks as they're moving. This has led some to believe that perhaps there is another mechanism at play for the movement of these stones, contributing to the idea of ley lines and strange electromagnetic properties seen at specific points around the world. This theory might actually prove to be legitimate, as researchers found that as seen in other areas around the world, and research into the event has proven that the rocks were not moved via any mechanisms of buoyancy regarding 2014 data, with research into the matter and other evidence that the natural materials found within the stones could be magnetic and manipulated by electromagnetic properties. So what do you make of these interesting photos? What do you think it shows? And how do you think it was able to move so far? Many of us find space interesting, and with things like movies, TV shows, and live feeds, it's helped a generation of people fall in love with the wonders of our universe. Every year, countless discoveries are made by space agencies, with NASA no longer being at the forefront of these discoveries. Other space agencies like SpaceX have stepped up their game, introducing us to new rockets, and even saying things like they plan to put millions of people on Mars within the next few decades. It's these announcements that have made people say that within the next few years, we're going to make big leaps in regards to space travel and discoveries. With more missions than ever being given the green light, people have taken time out to tune into these and wonder where the next one will take us. However, during these events, some people have made some interesting discoveries, even going as far as saying that when these missions are launched into space, they're not alone. A number of anomalies have been detected by the cameras, and this has caused many to slow down the footage in order to work out what these things are. One of the things that people say is when these strange crafts are seen out in space, they can't be ours. Agencies and researchers are quite open about the fact that space is one of the last unexplored frontier for humans. And this has caused amateur researchers to give their own opinions on what they think these objects are. One researcher said the following about this SpaceX video. For the last few days, this video has been making its way around Facebook, and it shows what looks like a large object flying close by. I've seen different comments, with some saying that it could be part of the man-made structure that came off during the mission and that the camera managed to pick up on it, while others think that is an unidentified flying object. What's odd is that this object does seem to have a pyramid-like shape, and to me it seems big." End quote. As mentioned, the clip is currently making the rounds on social media, with people confused about what the object is. Some people who slowed down the video suggested that it's actually a triangle UFO, a commonly cited UFO that's been reported for many years. As suggested in the name, these objects are triangular in shape and have been reported for many years, with UFO researchers saying they're one of the most common UFOs. Interestingly, amateur researchers have said these shaped crafts are also reported in space. Another user said the following about the footage. It's hard to deny that this is a trick of the camera. Whatever this object is, it definitely has the shape of a triangle, and it also looks like it has lights on it. I think this is some good evidence we have of an unidentified flying object in space." End quote. Going back a few weeks ago, Elon said the following on Twitter in regards to UFOs. "I have seen no evidence of an advanced civilization visiting Earth. Fuzzy pics that are worse than a 7 to 11 security cam frame grab don't count." End quote. Many people hit back at these comments, saying how close-minded and ignorant Elon has been. With one person saying the following, "The whole argument around why there aren't clear photographs with UFOs is a frustrating one. Take your iPhone camera, for example, and put it on maximum zoom and see what happens. It immediately goes fuzzy. Then try and take a photograph of something in the distance. Now imagine that object is moving in the sky. Now imagine your inner Carwassers is happening. It's near impossible to get a clear photograph of anything under these circumstances." One of the things that many people don't seem to mention is that while camera quality in everyday phones has massively increased, they're only really good for up-close photographs. Anything that's over 5 meters away starts to get blurry. Also, the majority of people aren't expecting to see UFOs, so the whole encounter is rushed. People are normally doing everyday things and don't expect to see a UFO. So when it happens, they just pull out their phone and try to take the best photo possible. It's not like people can walk around 24/7 with a tripod and a HD camera waiting for UFOs. End quote. As mentioned in previous videos, NASA's stance on these alleged objects is that they're just space debris and don't show anything of interest. Scientists and researchers all agree that these objects don't need to be investigated, and go on to say that these are likely camera anomalies. Amateur researchers have hit back at these claims, though, and say that many of these strange objects are detected during life-eons, so before the footage has even gone through any processing stages. Officials stick to their replies, though, and state these are not of interest. Mars is a planet that's of high interest. For years, NASA have been carrying out various experiments on the Red Planet, with other space agencies such as SpaceX saying they're also interested in Mars, even going as far as saying that within the next 10 years they want to put humans on the Martian soil. According to NASA, Mars is a planet that doesn't really have much going on, saying that the climate is harsh and there's no forms of life. Interestingly, though, various people have managed to capture some interesting photos of the Martian surface, with amateur researchers saying there's more going on there than what we're being told. One idea that's put forward is that Mars is actually full of precious metals, with gold being one of the main ones. NASA have even said that gold likely exists on Mars in trace amounts. Mars has the largest volcano in the solar system, Olympus Mons, and it's been theorized that gold could be near the surface of Mars as this volcano is still relatively young. Going back a few years ago, Amateur researchers posted images online allegedly showing what looks like small gold nuggets. One idea that was put forward was that the rock could be from a meteorite impact, and this isn't a far-fetched idea either, with scientists saying that over 200 meteorites hit the planet every year. The photographs were taken on the 26th of November, and NASA scientists said they'll now try to locate the objects so they can take more detailed photographs. These recent images are the ones that's currently making the rounds, allegedly showing what looks like large gold deposits on the Martian surface. Various people on Facebook groups gave their opinion on what they could be, with one user saying the following: "I think there's more to Mars than what they're letting on, and these discoveries prove it. I think there are large gold deposits that run through the surface of the planet. Maybe that's why Space Agency is gearing up to go there. We know there's water deposits there, so who knows what else is there?" End quote. It seems we'll have to wait for future missions to see if there's as much gold as people make out, or if it's just shiny rocks as some researchers suggest. Although this may be the case. Astronomers have said that space is littered with many interesting objects, one of which is that of the billionaire banking asteroid, more commonly known as 16 Psyche. An asteroid hitting Earth normally isn't a good thing. However, in March 1892, scientists discovered an incredible asteroid that's unlike any other that's out in our vast universe. 16 Psyche, as it was named, is not a rocky or icy body, but rather made up of valuable metals that are currently found in our core. Some of these metals are used in everyday industry, and some are a little more special. One of these metals is gold. In theory, we have a massive space bank sitting thousands of miles above us, somewhere between Mars and Jupiter. 16 Psyche measures around 140 Mars in diameter and makes up around 1% of the mass of the main asteroid belt. It's thought to be a stripped core of another planet, allowing scientists to gain a deeper understanding of what our planet's core is like. It's one of the biggest asteroids in the solar system, meaning if it did hit Earth, it would take a lot of people before anybody got their hands on any gold. However, if in theory scientists could harness the asteroid and bring it back to Earth, then the wealth that could be obtained would be unimaginable. As far as scientists currently know, this value stands at around $700 quadrillion. The thing is that making everybody billionaires would basically keep everybody at the same level of wealth they were before. The world economy is only worth around $59 trillion, so if 700 quadrillion was injected into it, the entire world economy would crash and would essentially render money worthless. For example, loaves of bread and pints of milk would begin to be priced at millions of pounds, and holidays at billions. In other words, there would be a massive inflation. Gold will no longer be worth as much, and this process is already underway as companies start to look at mining asteroids closer to Earth. Whilst we're on the business side of things, companies may begin to monopolize the mining of these asteroids, which would keep gold prices high and out of the hands of the average person. This sort of thing has happened before with valuable minerals and metals. In the 1800s South Africa, the De Beers Company effectively monopolized the diamond industry, inventing the cliché "a diamond is forever." Now NASA is hoping to send a craft to visit the asteroid in 2022, arriving in 2026. It offers NASA the chance to research forever about what our own planet is composed of, and to delve deeper into the history of how terrestrial planets came to exist. However, it seems highly unlikely that any of the gold in the chest will be in yours on my hands anytime soon. Something we can only dream of. It does show us, though, an example of what could be out there in the endless expanse of space. This incredible object was found within our solar system, something that is monumentally small when compared to the universe. It's one of the reasons that people have an open mind about things when it comes to our universe. Due to it being so vast, the possibilities are endless. As mentioned, companies like NASA and SpaceX are gearing up to send humans back into space, with missions being planned for the Moon and Mars. SpaceX has announced their plans to send over 1 million people to Mars by 2050. And not only this, but they plan to build an actual city for these people in the hopes that a new civilization can be started. Elon Musk stated in various tweets that the end goal is to get 1 million people on Mars, and he hopes to do this within the next few decades. He also said that he hopes that 1,000 starships can help him achieve this. He goes on to say that the goal is to be able to launch several of these starships a day, so the trips to Mars can be open all the time. If you visit Thirsk, which can be found in North Yorkshire, England, you can visit a small museum. However, inside this museum is an object that's been at the center of many mysteries, and has even caused people to leave the area and never return. The object that many people travel to see is that of a chair, which at the moment can be found hung from the ceiling. The reason that it's been placed here is because of the amount of complaints made, with people saying that when they touched the chair bad things would happen. Interestingly, the museum has kept its promise and is keeping the chair up high so nobody would make the mistake of touching it and risk bad things happening to them. So why is the chair so feared? The story goes that the chair belonged to Thomas Busby, a local man who is known to cause trouble throughout the area. He lived in the North Yorkshire area during the 1600s. He married a woman called Elizabeth, but during their relationship he would also get into trouble for petty crimes. There's also stories of his home containing secret passageways, where he would carry out illegal deals with some of the locals. One of these locals was known as a Waddy, who turned out to be Elizabeth's father. Various stories have been told about the father's last day, but they all follow a similar theme. It's reported that Thomas and the father got into an argument, and it was most likely about the business they were running. Locals reported that the two were often at each other's throats, and could always be seen arguing. One thing that is known is that when Thomas entered his favorite inn, he was met with Alty and Elizabeth. The father said he was going to take Elizabeth away, something that didn't go down well with Thomas. Not only this, but he soon realized that Alty was sitting in his favorite chair. This caused him to pick him up and throw him out of the pump. He then took his life with a hammer. Because Alty was known around the area, people started to get worried when he didn't turn up at the local inn, with some fearing that something bad may have happened. It wasn't long before a search was carried out, in which Alty was soon found. It was said that soon after, Thomas was arrested. His trial soon started not long after being taken in, after which it was announced that he would be sentenced to death. The inn was soon renamed after Thomas Busby, being called the Busby Stoop Inn. Before he was sentenced, though, it's reported he was granted one last wish, and he wished that he could have one last drink in his favorite inn. As he was sitting in his chair looking around at the people, anger came over him, knowing that once he was gone it was likely that people would sit in his chair, not wanting to live with this thought. He allegedly said that anyone sitting in his chair after his passing would be cursed. It didn't take long for the locals to report strange happenings in and around the pub, but the majority of these happened when someone sat in or touched Thomas Busby's chair. One report states that over 60 people have lost their lives after touching the chair. The first person to become a victim of the curse was that of a chimney sweeper. The year was 1895, and whilst they were having a drink, they decided to sit in the chair. It was reported that after they left the pub, they never made it home, being discovered the next day lying on the road. People suggested that their passing was due to them sitting in the chair. At this point, there started to be whispers of the chair being cursed, with some people even daring each other to sit in the chair to test the idea. The next people on the list were those of airmen. As mentioned, they would dare each other to sit in the seat, until one of them would finally give in. At the time, nothing happened, and they didn't think much of it. But all those men that sat in the seats never returned home from their missions, with the people that didn't sit in the seat returning. The next report was made in 1968, when the owner heard two airmen daring each other to sit in their seat. Both men ended up sitting in the chair, something that locals had warned them about. It seemed though it was too late, as their fate had already been sealed. When driving home, their car swerved off the road and hit a tree, causing both men to lose their lives. The next report was made in the 1970s, when the chair would take the life of a cleaning lady. After leaning on the chair, it was reported that she got a terrible headache. After going to get it checked out, it was reported that she had a brain tumor, something that had never been picked up before. She soon lost her life. Next up was a cyclist who sat in the chair while having a drink. As fate would have it, while cycling on a road, the man got involved in an accident, one that would take his life. The next was that of a group of builders who dared their youngest colleagues to sit in the chair. Under the peer pressure, he did. However, while carrying out a job on a roof, he ended up going through it and losing his life. The chair had claimed another victim. After this, the owners started to notice that something was wrong and placed the chair down in the cellar so no one would accidentally sit on it. It seems though that the chair was conning, as the delivery man had to place a parcel in the cellar, and while doing so the postman sat on the chair. It had claimed another life, as the man's van soon veered off the road. At this point, enough was enough, and the owners donated the chair in 1978 to the Thirst Museum, where it hangs high so no one can sit on it. Various people have visited the museum just to look at the chair, and it's now become the main attraction at the museum. Paranormal researchers have said it's one of the world's most haunted objects. So what do you guys make of this chat? And do you think the curse is real?